In any life, we have highs and lows, light and dark, wins and losses. What happens when we encounter that moment in time when what happens next could change everything? Join us as we step into another person's inspirational moment and see how we can connect their experience to ours. This is Greg Stevens, and you're listening to A Shot of Inspiration. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Shot of Inspiration. I'm Greg Stevens, your host. And today I've actually got my first interview with two people, which I've been looking forward to. We have Rod Zeeb and Lori Coonen, and they are two people that run a company called the Heritage Institute. And I got to work with Lori and Rod several years ago, several different times, and teaching crucial conversations, some of the work I do. And we just had a connection. I find these two people inspirational. They're doing great work in the world. And so I want to say, Rod, Lori, welcome to the show. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I do have to ask one question. My wife said you need to throw in there. How did you feel when I did the work with you? Any benefit from the work I did with you several years ago?
Okay, I'll go first. Then Lori's the chief learning officer. We did it twice. We did two different groups that you spoke to, and we got huge positive reviews both times. And it really did help, particularly because a lot of the things we do with families, you don't have the control, right? It's the influence. And so, yeah, it was very helpful for our group anyway.
That's great. Lori, your perspective.
Yeah. So what I loved the most, and with the feedback we got from our group was you applied it to your life and shared how you did it. So it was like, I can do it, you can do it. And you didn't sugarcoat it. You're like, it wasn't easy, but this is how I did it. And you showed perseverance and ways that you could apply things. And really the workbooks and how you went through it, you made it your own versus being a robot.
Yeah,
So
right.
Exactly.
very
Well, that's one thing I really appreciate about Crucial Learning. They allow the master trainers to be themselves. And I think when your authentic self shows up, amazing things do. But let's talk about the Heritage Institute. Rod, we're going to start with you because everything kind of stems from this. And you have a story that kind of led you to that. So share with us how it came about, what was the background, and how long has the organization been around, and what do you do? Let's start with that at the beginning here.
All right. So I was a estate planning attorney, and back in the 80s had a case that got me into this. We had a client that had a huge estate. It was 9 digits, which in the 80s was like real money.
Right.
And so what happened was pass the estate essentially tax-free, which as the estate planning attorneys, that's perfect planning. I mean, that's as good as it gets. And so we did, and I was just part of it. There's somebody else did most of the work. But then it was a family that I had known, and there were 2 boys that got the estate and 50-50. And the oldest boy ran 3 businesses bankrupt within about a decade and blew his entire share. That by itself is a whoa. What happened that got me into this was the younger son was a friend of mine, a good friend of mine, and he drank himself to death in about 7 years. It was just overwhelming. He wasn't prepared for what he was going to get. He didn't know, he couldn't compete with that. He just was totally overwhelmed. And I remember sitting at my desk going, okay, that's not an acceptable outcome. I'm not going to spend the rest of my life getting as much money as I can to the next generation just to kill him. And so I started doing the research on kind of what did I do wrong? And another guy was helping me with the research at that point was a quote from a philosopher in China that says, wealth never survives 3 generations. And this is not an American issue. This isn't a tax issue. We found quotes from all over the world. This is now the late 80s, early 90s. That's about the time that John Ward came out with the study that talked about the 90% rule, that 90% of the time. Okay, so that came out about the same time. And at that point, pretty much everybody was studying what went wrong. And I looked at it and goes, who cares what goes wrong? What went right? So what about those 10% that are successful? What do they do? Because if we can figure out what they do, then we can replicate that. So that's what we did. Perry joined me in about 94, 95 and complete the research. We came up with what's now known as the Heritage Process. Originally, we weren't going to teach it. We were going to try and let colleges do it. Well, that didn't work. So we formed the Heritage Institute in 2003. So in May, we're having our 20th anniversary conference. So that's how we got started.
That's great. That's a skill we teach in influencer. You look for positive deviance, those people who are outlying, who have succeeded where everyone else has failed. What are they doing differently?
Right.
And so your organization then goes in and helps families prepare, if they're high wealth families, of how to make sure that that wealth goes for more than three generations. Is that correct?
Actually, there's two pieces. The Heritage Institute part of it, we train other advisors to do that. So that was the group that you were at. Those were financial advisors, estate planning attorneys, family
Nonprofit.
coaches and things like that, nonprofits. Yeah. So we train professionals how to do that. And then we also do it with families. A lot of the people we train will come back and go, how about if we bring you in too? Can we collaborate together rather than wing it on our own with my best client?
Right.
So, yeah.
Well, tell me some of the successes you've had and just overall, what do you do when you go in and help these people? Specifically, they've already got financial advisors, like you said, and even the financial advisor many times hasn't done that piece. What is it you specifically possibly do that without giving away the farm?
I think the first step, and we'll let Lori jump in here because she actually created a lot of this stuff. The first step is, what do they want? I mean, that's really our first we start with. What's your desired outcome? And the question we ask a lot of people is, all right, are you confident that your children are prepared to protect, manage, and grow their inheritances? And the typical answer you get is either no or, oh, hell no. Uh, you know,
Right. Right.
and then the next question is, do you want to be? And some people don't care. There's a percentage of families just don't care.
Yeah.
So that's where we start. And then once we know that's what they want, then we go into what we call the heritage process in terms of helping the family build a culture of communication, trust, and mentoring that will just continue and identify their family purpose.
Yeah. It creates a connection, doesn't it, with a family?
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Well, Lori, how did you get involved with the organization? Kind of walk us through your story about how you got involved.
Sure. So Rod came to Wisconsin in 2004, I think it was, for the Financial Planning Association meeting. And I sat down with my team and he started talking about it. And I hit my boss at the time and I'm like, this is where planning needs to start. And he looked at me, he's like, Lori, you have way too much on your plate. No, you don't get to do this. But it was home for me. Like it really resonated. And I knew this is something that I wanted to pursue. So being the wonderful, loyal employee I always am, I continued down that road, but I was persistent and I continued to plant the seeds how heritage could be very valuable for the firm and completed my certification in 2008, which, yay. And I got to
Congratulations.
start working with some families at the firm. And then the market crashed and there was some turmoil in the firm, which didn't allow us to continue to do heritage design services. So in December, I decided to retire from my financial planning world and start my own business and only do heritage design. And then within a month, my dad had major health issues, which totally put everything on hold for me because I went home and stayed with him and ran the family businesses so he could recover. Thankfully, he did, which then in September of 2009 allowed me to create my business plan and relaunch, if you will, in 2010. And then that's when Rod offered me a position as a regional director for the Midwest for the Heritage Institute. And then they say the rest is history. I'm now the chief learning officer, and I am blessed to do both consulting and training advisors to help them change the world one family at a time.
That's awesome. What I love about it is something caught fire when you heard this. What was that for you? I find when that passion flame is lit, there's no putting it out if you really look at it. And it sounds to me like you really didn't have another choice because if you're listening to your heart, you had to take it. What was it that resonated for you?
So, my purpose in life is achieving great things together. And financial planning, yes, you're achieving things, but it's financial. And it's typically only talking with the matriarch and patriarch, or sometimes only the patriarch or only the matriarch. And as Rod was describing it at the Financial Planning Association, it was starting with the whole family and really doing things together, focused on a common purpose. And I just couldn't let that go.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. Now, tell me some of the things. I'm going to ask Lori this first, then I'm going to come to you, Rod, and ask it. What are some of the big successes that you felt like? I know you can't reveal any names, but give me some examples of things that you've seen families come together with, or things that maybe were unexpected that you've been able to experience that goes beyond the financial world.
Yeah. So one of my first cases that like totally solidified I'm doing what I meant to do was when it was like in 2012, and the patriarch was bringing me back to the airport because I travel all over to work with families. So on the drive back to the airport, he said to me, "Lori, I didn't realize how capable my children were." And these children were in their 20s, late 20s. So he goes, "Thank you for giving me that gift." And it just really helped me to see that, yeah, this is what I can do for families, and just giving them the space and the coaching needed to help them shine in each other's eyes. And that's truly what it's all about.
That's great. Yeah, I find a lot of people who have spent their lives trying to create that type of wealth have a disconnect many times with their families. And
Mhm.
because they've been working, it just doesn't fall in our laps. Someone created it somewhere. And I find that that disconnect, many times people need that restoration because that's when everything really comes together for them. And that's why they were working in the first place. So thank you for being able to give that to them because many people would go their entire life not having that confidence in their kids, and it's so important. Also, the kids need to know that as well.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, it's
Right.
so important. Yeah. Rod, how about you? What's a example of something you've seen?
I'm chuckling because we have another family that we both know that when we finished, the dad goes, "I got to tell you, I was shocked that they could do this." And one of the kids goes, "That's because you've never let us."
Yeah.
But yes, for me, one of the families that really stands out is a family that, as we got going, there was just a lot of tension, and the dad was, he didn't think they could do anything. They had the opportunity to talk first rather than him, and so we had them talk first. And by the time we got to noon, he was listening rather than telling. And by the end of the day, it was like everything had changed because they recognized I do have a voice. I'm different than dad. And that was one of the things that dad was the typical hard charger. Everything's on the way. And his kids were not. They were quiet and they were more reflective. One was a counselor. Um, and when he recognized that they had gifts that he didn't have, and they recognized that even though they weren't like him, they had gifts that he didn't have.
Yeah.
And I think what really cemented it is at the very end, you go around the room and we're talking about what's a big benefit and what'd you learn. And he said that he recognized that they were ahead of where he was at their age. And that was a huge shock because kids are always comparing themselves to the parents now. And when they heard him say, "Man, when I was your age, you're way ahead of where I was at," totally changed the game.
Yeah. Well, there's that acknowledgement every child wants from their parent as
Right.
well.
Right.
And what I get is, in essence, it's almost like it's not just financial investment, it's relationship investment is what you're doing when you do that around money. It's so interesting because I think every family really wants the connection, but if the focus has been on money and that gets lost, and you create an environment where so those things can be said, brought up, the hurts probably and the pains in there,
Mhm.
and there's probably sometimes tears and healing through that.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I love that part because that's the mediator in me. I love to get families together. I find when people really start to listen and see each other for who they are, things you never imagined can come up, and you're confirming it with both your
Right.
stories. Ron, I'm going to throw this one out to you first. What do you like best, and what do you dislike about what you do?
What I like best is I love that it's a giant puzzle. Every family is different. There is no, we're going to do the same thing with everybody and it's all going to come out the same way. Every family is different. And so it's like a new game every time. And you know that what's going to happen at the end, if everybody participates, it's going to be something positive for them. I just love, I used to draft trust. Okay.
Exactly.
And there you go.
Hear you. Yeah, definitely. What do you dislike most?
For me, it's all the prep and all the stuff that we have to do to have these family meetings. Details are not my friend. And now, particularly, you got kids all over the world trying to get everybody together, even if it's on Zoom. It's the prep time. Once we walk in the room,
Yeah.
I'm golden. It's getting there that can be pretty draining for me.
Right. And Rod, I'm a lot like you. It's interesting. I brought on Jamie Bill, my business partner, and she's amazing. And she reminds me of Lori. And my relationship with Jamie, I'm like you. I'm all over the place. I just want to get in and enjoy the other stuff. And you people like you and me need someone who's an anchoring that
Oh,
knows the process, that understands all of that. And Lori, would you say you're that for Rod?
Yeah.
Tell us more about that.
So I guess I am very grateful that Rod allowed me to come underneath his wing and be that prep person because that's how you learn. Like you learn from start to finish exactly what's needed and how to prepare. And I can tell you that this heritage community has been phenomenal for me, my self confidence, my stage presence, everything. When I joined in 2008, 9, you would not see me up in the front on stage. You would not see me leading a family.
we can see her on here. Oh,
No. I was the behind the scenes, the prep, the second chair in the back of the room, not even in the front. And the community just, I don't know, they just really rallied to help me get the self confidence and understand my leadership and my role.
Mhm.
And now I feel like, yeah, I can lead it. I can do everything from prep to everything after. And for me, my favorite part is helping the families kind of share and get on the same page and be able to understand each other and the hugs at the end, of course.
I love that. I love that. Yeah, because then you know that it was successful. When you really get down to that money, whatever that is down the line, that's the moment that you're looking for, I think,
yeah.
because then you can go forward together. Yeah. What do you dislike about it most?
So, to be completely transparent, I absolutely hate it when schedules change. And I know that happens. Life is life, and there's going to be those things. But if I'm planning for something and it changes, it kills me.
Well, y'all must have been livid earlier because scheduling got messed up. I guess y'all didn't think we were going to have it at last minute. Again, I'm glad we're here. I'm glad we got that
It's
hand.
good. I was good. I
Yeah,
knew it, Greg.
that's good. That's good. So let's talk about this because we have also a lot of entrepreneurs, business owners. Tell us about that piece of both of you running the business, going out there. What are some of the things that have inspired you to keep going? I know there's probably been times when I have my business. I even had some setbacks this week, and each time those come up, I try to be thankful. But I find sometimes my wife was like last night, she goes, "It's okay to be disappointed." And I was like, I know, but I'm thankful for the lesson. I know it's going to serve me down the line. It's going to help me with a story that someone needs to hear. I truly believe there's a reason for all that. What are some of the obstacles you faced in running the organization and some of the overcoming moments that was like, wow, I really see why that was worth it? Lori, I'm going to start with you on this one.
Let's see. For me, uh, we can talk about COVID. So prior to COVID, our training was in person, and I absolutely love being in person, training people. I just feel that's my best place to be.
Mhm.
But in 2020, we had to pivot and really make a lot of it virtual.
Yeah.
Trusting that we would get there and figure out how and can we make it as effective as in person? We practice. We allow people to really try things out so that they're comfortable and confident when they walk out the door so that they can use it with their clients and they're not testing on their clients. How could you do that virtually? Well, we learned and we grew and just really our attendees embraced it. We worked with the breakout rooms and all of that kind of stuff. So I think that was a huge hurdle in the training world and also in the consulting world too, because everyone just stayed put, right?
Yeah.
But we did have several families, and actually the consulting kind of boosted during COVID because families were starting to think about what matters most and reach out. And we did successfully work with families virtually for their first several meetings. So I think that's where you just trust that it will all work out and thankful for the new opportunities to learn, right, Greg?
Yeah. But what's beautiful now, you have an ability to pivot, which you didn't have before. And
Right.
it is uncomfortable. I remember when I first started training virtually, it's like, I don't know if I'm going to do this. Then COVID hit, and I was one of the few master trainers that was certified. So all of a sudden, it was class after class after class. My learning curve went really quickly. But that's what I've also found. There's a lot of boring trainings and development out there. I find most people don't want to take crucial conversations online. They think, oh, I've got to take it in person. I felt that way too until we've got it right. And it's one of those things that we actually can engage with. So, really excited that you are able to do that. So, Rod, share with us what your perspective was on that same question.
Part of it was, okay, going back to the COVID thing, I was convinced it's not going to be the same with families and all that stuff. But what we found is there were families that could never get together in person because they were all spread out and all this that could do it virtually. And so that was recognition for me. It's okay, even though it may not be the way I think is ideal, this is way better than not doing anything.
Right.
And at
Right.
least now we can get into the game with these families and do that. And that, I guess that's that whole COVID's one of the examples, but it's those outside influences that you don't have any control over.
Yeah.
Going back to, like she said, 2008. Well, in 2008, I think 90 some percent of our members were somehow in the financial services world. And when the stock market dropped like 50%, they were preoccupied with
Yeah.
this was not number one, with families and everything else. So it's those outside, what do they call them, black swans or whatever, that come up and you're just not ready for them.
Yeah.
And then just knowing that, okay, we've done this before. And yeah,
It would have been gone. Yeah,
yeah.
definitely. So, as we finish up, what I'd like to do is have you share one more story. It can be about heritage, it could be something else. But what is something that has inspired you to move forward in the face of all obstacles, whether it's a person, whether whatever story that is? So, Ron, I'm going to start with you on this one. Throw that out there as a curveball. What's that? It could be a personal one, it could be a word. What's been inspirational for you?
I think there was one family that I knew the dad forever. I mean, he was part of from back in the law practice and all that, business owner, hard charging and all of that, and was convinced that A, his family couldn't do it, and B, he couldn't do it because he couldn't teach it. He just wanted to tell everybody what to do. And it took probably, I want to say 18 months to get him to finally hold a meeting and get the family all together. But when we got them all together, and again, as we started going through this, and for that family, it was the piece in the middle for what we call a family alignment milestone, where we deal with leadership styles. And all of his kids had a completely different leadership style than he did. And so he didn't think they were leaders. When they all recognized, both sides, that they were leaders, just not like him, and he's recognized they were leaders, just not mine. The shift that happened in that family that's a couple of hours. That's not days and months and years. That was just a couple of hours. That's when you go, okay, yeah, it was hard to get here, but you can't
Yeah.
replicate that. There's nothing you can do
Yeah.
this better.
It also makes it sweet because I call those that breakthrough moment, that aha. I never saw it this way, but it's so interesting because to get there, what I find is you have to surrender, you have to give up something.
Right.
And that's when the breakthrough can happen. It can't happen until then. But think about this. You waited 18 months, have that, and all the stress, things like that. So if you're listening, I encourage you, engage with it. Fear always distorts, and you can't see the real reality of what can come out if you buy into whatever that fear is, because it's always going to distort. It's never going to be a clear picture.
Yeah.
So, Rod, thank you. How about you, Laurie? You share one of your inspirational ideas.
So I think for me, it kind of comes from what we train our advisors to do. When they're with a family, you facilitate to the family. So you prepare, you have that quiet confidence. And when you're with the family, you're facilitating to the family where they need to go. The community had really, like I had said, rallied around me to give me that self confidence that I don't need to know every script and every step on how to do things. It truly is, if you're focused where you need to be with the family and you're there for them, not just with them, but you're there for them, it will all work out. And yeah, the community is my inspiration.
I love that. I was talking to a guy the other day. He said he looked at his life, very successful person. He said, I find 90% of it is just showing up. And he said, so often I just haven't want to show up. But he said, when I do, amazing things can really happen in that moment, but they can't if you're not there.
There, yeah.
Yeah. So, Lori, I'm going to ask you to share what would be your sweet spot client? Well, who are you looking for to come to you? And then, Rod, in a moment, I'm going to have you tell people how they can reach you, because I want to make sure if you're listening to this, I trust Lori and Rod because I've worked with them. I know their background. I know their character. And in this world, there's so many people that would take advantage of people and do things like that. That's why I'm so happy to have you here on the show. Your character, you live what you teach, you care about people. So, Lori, what would be your organization's key client that you're looking for?
So for the Heritage Institute, really, we're looking for those professionals that want to take their practice or their organization to the next level and really focus on the relationship and the family and the retention. So just including different things within their current practice and then adding maybe the heritage design services to really solidify that connection. So advisors that are seeking to take their relationships with their clients and their prospects to the next level.
So, financial advisors looking to do that. And also, any particular thing for wealth of family? Is there an area you focus in there?
Yeah, for me, this is where Rod and I are a little different. A lot of my clientele or my prospects are second generation. So they're daughters, sons that want to give the gift of guided discovery, meaning documenting their mom and dad's stories, life lessons, values, vision as a birthday gift or as a 50th anniversary gift. And that is such a special gift to give the parents because typically the parents are like, no one cares. Who wants to hear my story? They don't have time. And just to be fair to that second generation, they don't have time right now because they have kids, they have careers, so they are interested, but being able to record it and then share it so that the next generation can listen to it throughout time versus in one period of time is a big gift. So the second generation that really is focused on having mom and dad document the story, learning about how the values came to be, the vision of the family, the common purpose, that would be a target for me.
That's great. Good. Any different on your target, Rod? Because it sounds like Lori works with second generation. You work mainly with first.
I get a lot of business owners. Yeah. So I work more with first than I do second. And the other question we get all the time is what size estate? We wrote the Beating the Mice Curse book back in 2004. And so they had me survey my clients from that year. And I worked with clients that year with estate sizes ranging from 250,000 to 2.5 billion. Most people fit somewhere in that range, right? This is, if you care about your family, this is something that's important. And so it's not limited to financial
I
things. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
And
great.
every day is a great day to invest in your family.
Right.
What I'm thinking.
I agree. Couldn't be a better investment out there, I don't think. So, Rod, how do people get a hold of you? Tell people where to go to find out information and how to reach out for you.
So there's two different places depending on which role you're in. Okay. If you're the professional who works with the families, then that's the Heritage Institute. So the website is www.the Heritage Institute. You have to have a the in there. You get a school up in Canada or something. Yeah, theheritageinstitute.com. But then on the other side, we have Genacy, which is the part of our group that actually works with the families or works collaboratively with professionals who don't want to get trained and do it themselves. They just want to bring somebody in. So that's Genacy Group. Genacy is Genacy. So genacygroup.com get you that. So if you want to be trained to do it, that's the Heritage Institute. If you either want to collaborate or you're a family and you want to do it, that's Genacy Group.
Well, I got to ask, what does Genesee mean, or is there a meaning to it?
It's a made up name. So Genacy stands for generational legacy. So we took the GEN out of generational and the ACY out of legacy and
I love
made
that.
up our own word.
I love that. I had no idea. That's great. So, as we finish up, is there anything you would like to say to our listeners? One final comment, Rod. I'm going to start with you, and then I'll go to Lori next. Any final thing you'd like to say?
I think the thing is, you hear that quote about nobody when they died said, I wish I would have had one more day at work or whatever. And there really is not a better time to start helping your family than now. And it's not going to get any better. It's easy to get caught up. I was talking to a guy who's in business. I said, it's easy to get caught up in the busyness of business and miss out on some really important things.
Yeah, definitely. Lori, how about you?
One of my favorite quotes working with families is, you don't get harmony when everyone sings the same note. Working with families, you're thinking, oh, we all have to agree on the same exact thing, that kind of stuff. And one of the things that I love is creating an environment where everyone is comfortable sharing their own opinions, but also being respectful of each other's opinions and being willing to work through the conversation in order to figure out what is the common purpose, creating that harmony.
I love that. I love that. Rod, Lori, thank you so much. And I support the work you do. Just let me know if we can do anything for you. I love you so much. Thanks so much. And everyone, thanks for listening to another episode of A Shot of Inspiration. And we'll see you next time. Bye-bye. Thanks for listening to this episode of A Shot of Inspiration. If you like this or any of our other episodes, make sure you rate it and share it with a friend. This is Greg Stevens, and we look forward to being with you next time. Until then, be bold, be courageous, and respectfully speak your truth.